Okay, we continue on with the Perek Hey, Mishnah Aleph. This Perek continues the discussion of the halachas of Yain Nesech. Our Mishnah here, Mishnah Aleph, teaches that not only is Yain Nesech also behano, as we learned consistently, but it is also to benefit even from working with Yain Nesech. And here the Mishnah tells us, if an idolater hires a Jewish worker to work with him with Yain Nesech, as a lamoshel, to pour Yain Nesech into barrels, or to move these barrels of Yain Nesech from one place to the other, and then he gets paid. Says the Mishnah, Asu, this worker's wages are prohibited for benefit. They're also behano. His wages are also behano. Schore also, which means that neither he nor anyone else may have any hano from the money that he was paid for this work. Now this is a gzeira derabanan, because al pidina Torah midoraisa, only the yain itself is also behano, as we learned in Mishnah, in Perek Beis Mishnah Gimel. However, since the Isur of Avodah Zarah, the Isur of idolatry, is considered by the Torah so severe, therefore the Chachamim, the Rabbanon, did not want anyone to have anything to do with Yain Nesech under any circumstances. And therefore, they penalized a person by forbidding him to have any ano from the money that he receives for working with Yain Nesech in any way. They extended this Isur even to Stam Yeinam, not just Yain Nesech, but Stam Yeinam, any Goyish wine, the ordinary wine of Goyim, that was not necessarily used in any way, shape, or form for Avodah Zarah per se. So the first din is Osu. However, continues the Mishnah, but if the idolater, if the goy hired a worker to do other work for him, lamoshal, to move barrels that do not contain Yain Nesech, then, if you hired him to move barrels, just any kind of barrels, not Yain Nesech barrels, if he said to him, but move this barrel of Yain Nesech from me, from this place to that place, and the worker did so, says the Mishnah, Schore Muto, his wage for the other work that he did is Muto Behano. But this is so only when the idolater said he would pay the Jew a certain amount, let's say a peruta, per barrel. So according to this agreement, he's paid for every barrel that he moves, even if he does not move all of them. And therefore, the money that he receives for moving the other barrels is not connected to the money for the barrel of Yain Nesech. And it is permitted because he gets paid per barrel. So all the barrels that he moved that were not Yain Nesech, he can go ahead and take the money. Obviously, he can't take the puta from moving the Yain Nesech barrel. And if he receives it, he must destroy it. He can't use it. He has to get rid of it. However, if the agreement was that he would be paid a certain amount for moving all of the barrels, and one of the barrels was a yain nesach barrel, then the entire wage is forbidden. Why is that? Because he's not paid in this case unless he moves all of the barrels. So his wage for the rest of the barrels is connected also to the one or the two or the three barrels of yain nesach that were there, and therefore he cannot have any hano from the totality of the wages that he received. Now the Mishnah continues weiter and teaches us about another form of working with yain nesach, in which the payment is forbidden, in which the payment is also behano. And that is, the Mishnah says, if an idolater rents a Jew's donkey to carry yain nesach on it, the fee, the rental fee for the use of the donkey, is also behano. It's prohibited for benefit. If, however, the idolater rents the donkey to ride on it, that's what he's paying him for. So then, then even if the idolater placed his jug of yain nesach on it, then again the fee is permitted, is mutar behano, because the fee is paid for the right to ride the animal, and is not specifically to put the yain nesach on it. Let's understand a little bit better that although it is understood that the idolater will place his food, including its yain nesach, on the donkey while he travels, the fee is considered al pi halacha only for the right to ride on it. That's what he's paying for. He's paying for the right to ride on it. What he puts on it is his business, not mine. This we can see from the fact that the idolater would not be able to ask for a reduction of the rental fee for agreeing not to place his yain nesach on it, says the Tosfos Yontif. And therefore the fee paid for using the donkey is permissible. But the Meiri adds that the same thing would be true if he rented the donkey to the idolater for any other permissible use. For example, to carry packages that do not contain yain nesach, to move things, pieces of furniture that do not contain yain nesach. Then he's permitted to take the wages completely. Now, there's an important Rav here on the heading Aseicher Sachamur Schoro Osu. The Mishnah told us that if an idolater rents a Jew's donkey to carry yain nesach, then the payment paid is also behano. Says the Rav Hamas Nisi Nochet La Mishum Sefer. This Mishnah is learned for the Sefer. The Sefer also Lashmoina. The Sefer teaches us the Afal Gav the Aseicher Sachamer the Chevolav Stama Schora Nami Laniach Legino Shel Yain Umizinoisef Aleah. So if we go ahead, in the end of the Mishnah tells us that he rented this donkey to ride on it. But he went ahead. He rented the donkey to ride on it, to sit on it, to travel on it. So even though he put his yain nesach on it, the sochar is a mutar. So the Rav explains, this is the big chiddush of the Mishnah. The salka daita chamina de have kilu schara meikor lavia lea yain nesach uschara also. I would think that being that he knew a priori that he's going to put yain nesach on it, still in all, the Mishnah is mashmiya kamash malan. No, if he rented it for the purpose of riding on it, schara mutar. Now the Mishnah continues with halachas that are very much nageya, that are very integral to basic issues discussed in Yoredeya. And this is here, and other Mishnayos and other Gemaros in Avodah Zarah are the yesod of many such critically important Yoredeya halachas. Yain Nesach Shenofal, the Mishnah is going to talk about the halacha of Yain Nesach that becomes mixed with other foods. So Yain Nesach Shenofal al Gabi Anovim, if Yain Nesach fell onto grapes, so the Yain is cold, and the grapes are also cold, but not only are they cold, but they're whole grapes. They're not cracked, they're not cut in any way, they're not punctured, they're whole grapes. So Yain Nesach fell on top of these kind of grapes. What should you do? Yedichein ve'en mutoros. You can rinse them off with water, and they're permitted to be used. The grapes may be eaten, and these very same grapes may be made into wine. Why is that? Because the wine was not absorbed into the grapes. That's the key. The wine was not absorbed into the grapes. So you rinse them off, you wash them off with cold water, and that removes anything that is on top of the grapes, and that removes any kind of trace of the Yain Nesach that fell on them. Remember, the Yain Nesach didn't go into the grapes. The Yain Nesach fell onto the grapes. The grapes are whole. And therefore you wash them off, you rinse them off, and Megate Vita, you can go ahead and do what you want to do with the grapes. Eat them, make them into wine, into grape juice, whatever. But if the skins of the grapes were cracked, the grapes are not whole. The grapes are cracked. They're punctured. The skins are cracked, and the Yain Nesach fell on them. Then they are asuros. They're asuros. These grapes may not be used because it is assumed that the wine seeped through these cracks that are in the grapes and came into the grapes themselves, and therefore that wine that fell into them, that seeped into them, cannot be washed off. These grapes become also because of the Yain Nesach that fell up into them, not on them, but into them. Nafal al gabi te'enim or al gabi timorim. If Yain Nesach fell onto fresh figs or fresh dates, then even if their skins are not cracked, still and all it cannot be washed off. Wine, explains the Meiri, wine that seeps into figs, and due to the figs' softness, even without actual cracks, it also gets into the many creases of the dates and cannot be rinsed off. So nofal al gabi te'enim or al gabi temorim, even though they're not cracked per se, still in all, even if their skins are not cracked, it cannot be washed off. And therefore, the Mishnah goes on to the next level of halacha. Im yesh bahen benoisen tam. Also, here's a very important yesod in Yoredeya, in Hilchas Ma'acholos Asuros, that if yesh bahen benoisen tam, if there is enough wine in them to give flavor to them, it is also to eat these figs or these dates. Let's understand it better. That is, if the amount of Yain Nesach that fell onto the figs or that fell onto the dates is enough for its taste to be noted, enough for the taste to be noticed when eating them, they may not be eaten. Yesh bahem benoisen tam. You already sense the flavor, the taste of the wine in these figs or grapes. Now, although the figs and dates are permitted foods, it's forbidden to eat food in which one can taste, in which one can have, in which one senses the time of something which is also. Im yesh boy benoisen tam, if that which fell onto the figs or the grapes, onto the figs or the dates, or any other such situation in halacha, and you sense the taste of the davar also, then it's also. Now, this ruling also applies to the Mishnah's earlier case, that the cracked grapes are not prohibited unless there is enough wine in them to be tasted, unless there is enough noisen tam. Now, let's broaden the base a bit and explain that it's also for a Jew to taste the fruits to see if they have the flavor of wine in them. Because in case they do, then he's violating the issue of tasting them. So what do? So what does that mean? How do you know if there's a noisen tam? The Jew can't taste it. So what are you supposed to do? So then the halacha teaches us that they therefore must be given to a non-Jewish maven, to a non-Jewish expert, let's say to a chef, to taste. If this is not possible, we follow the general principle of halacha that the Gemara in Chulin teaches us, that unless there is 60 times more permissible food than the forbidden food that fell into it, if there's 60 times more of the permissible food over the davar also that fell into it, then we assume that it is also. That's the halacha. That's the halacha in your Adeya, based on the Gemara. According to Ashkenazic minhag, the custom of Ashkenazic Jews is not to rely on a non-Jew in such matters, and always require shishim. Always require 60 times as much permissible food over the davar also that fell into it. Very important yesod. Yesh behen benoisen tam also. How do you know if there's a noisen tam? The Jew can't taste it. There's no goy. Then you have to rely on the principle of shishim. There has to be 60 times as much of the permissible over the davar also, and we Ashkenazi Jews following the Ramah always require shishim and never rely on the goy. Okay, very important yesod here, which means that the taste of wine and grapes and figs and dates is good. Now the Mishnah comes ahead. Now the Mishnah goes ahead and discusses the halacha in a case where the wine gives a bad taste, a noisen tam livgam. Livgam means a negative taste, a foul taste, a yucky taste. Im yesh bo benoisen tam. The assumption is that benoisen tam is also because it's good. But what if it's noisen tam livgam? Now the Mishnah gives us the root of that halacha. Ma'aseh bebaitus ben zoinin shehevi groigos besfina. There was an incident in which Baisus, the son of Zoinin, brought dried figs on his ship. And to his misfortune, what happened? V'nishtabra chovit shel yain nesach v'nofel al gabein. And the barrel of yain nesach broke, and the wine spilled on his groigos. They spilled on his figs. The wine did not belong to Baisus, but to an idolater. traveling on the ship. So here he has this whole bunch of dried figs that he's bringing from who knows where. He's bringing them from Turkey. And Yain Nesach spilled all over them. The Rav says, "Umayse nami bebaitus benzoinin shoyomevi goygos bisfina, v'nishtaba chavit shel yain nesach al gabein, uba maise lifnei chachomim." The Mishnah continues, "V'shal lechachomim." He asked the chachomim about the dried figs, and they told him he can use them. How can he use them? Even though the flavor of the nesach wine was noticeable in the dried figs, still the Chachamim, Paskin Lekula, the Chachamim ruled that they were permitted because the wine gives an unpleasant taste to dried figs. The wine gives an unpleasant taste to dried figs. It gives it a tam lifgam. Lifgam means negative, foul, as opposed to fresh figs that we mentioned earlier in the Mishnah, which is not lifgam. The Mishnah will explain soon that a forbidden food does not prohibit a permitted food if it gives a bad taste to the mixture, if it is noisen tam lifgam, and dried figs getting all sorts of wine over them makes them lifgam. And here the Mishnah gives us this very, very important yisoid that is one of the most important yisoids in Yoredeya. The Mishnah gives us a rule about forbidden foods that get mixed up with permitted foods. Ze haklal, says the Mishnah. This is the rule. Kol shebe'ana also b'noisin tam, any forbidden food whose taste is beneficial to a mixture, so that if it falls into permitted food, the person who eats the mixture will enjoy the flavor that the forbidden food gives it. It's nice and tam also. And that causes the mixture to be also. But on the other hand, kol she'ein ba'ana also b'nois and tam. However, any forbidden food whose taste is not beneficial to a mixture, so that if it falls into permitted food, the person who eats this mixture will not enjoy the flavor. That the forbidden food gives it. For example, the forbidden food is spoiled, or the two flavors do not taste good together, the two flavors clash, then it's mutar. Then it leaves the mixture permissible. The mixture becomes permitted. Kigoin, such as Mishnah gives an example, a well-known example. Kigoin choimetz shenofal al gabe grisin. If vinegar made from yain nesach fell onto split beans, then it's nice and tam lifgam, and it's mutar. Now the Mishnah refers to hot beans, to which vinegar gives a bad taste. However, if forbidden vinegar fell onto cold beans, they're permissible, even if they're later heated, because vinegar gives a pleasant taste to cold beans, the Rav explains. Now, the halachas taught in this Mishnah apply to yain nesach that fell into other foods. Now, yain nesach that falls into kosher wine has different rules, and they are discussed at the end of the perek in Mishnah Ches. Now, just to conclude, the halachas of forbidden food that give a bad flavor in Nois and Tam Nifgam have very many details and many, many implications in your Adeya into many different aspects of Hilchas Kashrus.